It's the Wilk Report. I'm Michael Wilk, coming to you from Cleveland, Ohio, with a follow-up to my video from yesterday about the reaction to the Rise of Skywalker by members of the shill media. Now, I'm going to go into a Collider.com hit piece by Matt Goldberg. I'm going to warn you right now, Matt Goldberg is a complete and total shill for The Last Jedi, and his critique of the Rise of Skywalker basically reads like a fanboy of The Last Jedi who's pissed off because he didn't get the movie he wanted, which was just another form of destruction of the Skywalker legacy. So he's criticizing another form of that same destruction of the Skywalker legacy. So basically, his main bitch is that the Skywalker legacy wasn't destroyed the way he wanted it to be destroyed. So yeah, let's get to it. The Rise of Skywalker review, what a piece of junk. So I'm going to highlight the relevant parts and gloss over the parts where he's basically giving a virtual blowjob to Rian Johnson. By his own admission, director Jar Jar Abrams is bad at endings. I've never been great at endings, Abrams told the New York Times. I don't actually think I'm good at anything. Well, that's okay, Jar Jar, because nobody else thinks you're good at anything either. But I know how to begin a story. Ending a story is tough, so perhaps it should come as no surprise that Abrams' grand conclusion to the Skywalker saga, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, is a failure. The nature of the failure is also not entirely unexpected if you look at Abrams' body of work. A skilled mimic, Abrams has trouble drilling down on the finer aspects of stories, relying more on nostalgia and recognition rather than surprising story turns. He's able to paper over this weakness with endearing characters and breakneck pacing. Well, no, the characters are not endearing. They're just shallow one-dimensional concepts masquerading as characters. But the breakneck pacing is how he papers over his weaknesses as a storyteller, basically not letting you have enough time to process the insults that are coming at your intelligence, a mile a minute. So he got away with it before with The Force Awakens, but with The Rise of Skywalker, his weaknesses get the better of him, resulting in a movie with poor plotting, shallow character development, and underwhelming revelations. Emperor Palpatine lives. Supreme Leader Kylo Ren has sought out the Emperor because he represents a challenge to Kylo's power, but Palpatine offers Kylo Ren the power of the Final Order, a fleet of Star Destroyers that will allow Kylo Ren to dominate the galaxy. In exchange, Kylo Ren must kill Rey. Meanwhile, Rey, Finn, and Poe are tasked with finding a special artifact that will lead them to the Emperor so they can stop him and the threat he presents to the galaxy. However, along the way, as Rey repeatedly confronts Kylo Ren, she begins to lose the truth about her parentage yet again. Even from this brief synopsis, you can probably spot the myriad of problems that Rise of Skywalker presents. Since Palpatine isn't dead, it means Darth Vader's sacrifice in Return of the Jedi was pointless. Additionally, if Palpatine isn't dead, it means he's just been sitting around for a generation with a fleet of powerful ships waiting for someone to do him a solid. Why he's waited so long to send out his message is never explained. Furthermore, The Last Jedi ends with the First Order in a fairly dominant position, so why we need the Final Order more than the First Order doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But the larger problem with the movie is that Abrams is terrified of originality or doing anything bold that might be interpreted as unpopular. His reliance on nostalgia proves his undoing. You have a movie where the bad guy is Palpatine again. The characters have to go to the ruins of the Death Star, which shouldn't even exist within the movie, because if you look at Return of the Jedi, the way that ended, the Death Star was basically it was atomized in orbit. Its destruction was so complete that any pieces that fell into the atmosphere of the moon of Endor burned up on entry. There shouldn't even be any ruins. So again, it's just thrown in there, for pointless nostalgia pushing. because that's all Jar Jar Abrams has. He hasn't got an original bone in his body. But yeah, Goldberg says, at one point I threw up my hands in frustration and wished Abrams would stop digging through the past and try something new and daring. And, and I'm going to address this because it really needs to be. Goldberg says, I don't know if this movie was made in response to appease everyone who hated that The Last Jedi made bold choices. Well, no, it didn't make bold choices. It made stupid and insulting choices. That's not bold. That's just contemptuous bullshit. But yeah, those people can rest easy with a safe movie that makes no sense and has no character arcs. If all you desire is, I recognize the thing, then Rise of Skywalker is the movie for you. Yeah, except this movie really wasn't made for fans of the original trilogy. It was made for people who've never seen the original trilogy. Or the prequel trilogy, for that matter. So he says, for all its world building, the Star Wars movies live and die by the characters, and despite casting winning actors, well, no, he didn't. He cast actors from the original trilogy. Yeah, they're winning actors, but if you think Daisy Ridley and John Boyega and Oscar Isaac are winning actors, I don't know what you're smoking, but keep it to yourself because it's obviously affected your brain in a very negative way. But yeah, Rey is still wrestling with her parentage as well as potential darkness inside her that never really appeared until this movie. I mean, at least with Luke, throughout the first trilogy, we got hints that much like his father, he was brash and impulsive and, yeah, was someone who could, if he didn't tread carefully, fall to the dark side. We got that in The Empire Strikes Back when he goes to confront Vader after having a Force vision of Han and Leia and Chewie in danger. And so, yeah, Vader kind of goads him into a position where he can capture him, but he ends up just slicing off his hand, and Luke escapes, but, you know, he's clearly not in a good place emotionally after that scene. So, you know, when we get to Return of the Jedi and Luke goes to confront his father for the final time, yeah, I mean, he does give into his anger briefly before overcoming it, and that's his victory. Not giving into anger, not use. I mean, Palpatine is not defeated by Luke, just as the One Ring in Return of the King was not destroyed by Frodo. Because it's not Frodo who's meant to be the hero in this story. He's not meant to be the one who actually defeats the enemy. It's Gollum who defeats Sauron by getting the ring from Frodo and falling into the crack of doom where the ring was forged. Because Tolkien's main point in the Lord of the Rings saga, which, you know, the groundwork for which was laid in The Hobbit and then concluded in the trilogy, was that good doesn't necessarily or always defeat evil. The day is not necessarily won by heroic deeds by heroic people. Very often, evil defeats itself. And that's what happens to Palpatine in Return of the Jedi. Vader turns on his master because he is conflicted. He is the Gollum of that trilogy. The one who turned from a good guy into a bad guy has spent pretty much his entire life from that point, you know, being that bad guy and you know, accepting his fate, you know, because of the choices he made. But when he realizes that his son is alive, the part of him, you know, the part of him that remained good, just like Gollum had that original Smeagol aspect of himself, you know, Vader still had some of Anakin Skywalker in him that was reawakened when he realized his son was alive. and that he had a chance at redemption. And therefore it is Vader, not Luke Skywalker, who finally defeats Emperor Palpatine. If the Force requires balance between the light and the dark, Vader's turning to the dark side by Palpatine was balanced out by the birth of Luke and Leia, more specifically Luke, to balance that out because he was needed in order to reawaken that part of Vader that was still Anakin Skywalker so that he could fulfill the destiny he was originally supposed to and had failed to do. So there's a lot of Tolkien-esque stuff in the original Star Wars trilogy, and it was done by, and for all of George Lucas's storytelling flaws, I mean, you cannot deny that he knew what he was doing, or that he was informed by all these, various influences by master storytellers, and became one in his own right, at least for a brief time. I mean, the prequel trilogy, I think its biggest thing was that its two biggest problems were, one, George Lucas kind of got full of himself after 20 years, and two, he is that kind of genius who desperately needs somebody slapping his hands away from the keyboard whenever he starts going out of control. So, but here, the Jar Jar Abrams is simply relying on nostalgia pushing. And there's no character arcs. I mean, even the original Star Wars trilogy had its subplot with Han and Leia. It wasn't just Luke. It had Han and Leia, finding each other and falling in love, and basically, that was a secondary journey, much like the subplot in Return of the King, where you had Faramir and Eowyn falling in love, and after each has concluded a heroic arc. But that's, again, those are elements of Tolkien. Those are influences that George Lucas channeled through his own brain to come up with something that had his own voice to it. But with Jar Jar Abrams, there's none of that. The only reason Palpatine is even in this movie is because Rian Johnson killed off Snoke, Abrams' original stand-in for Palpatine. That's the only reason. And he couldn't figure out a plausible way to bring Snoke back that would make sense. So he just drags out Palpatine. So yeah, let's go ahead and continue. Rise of Skywalker isn't really about anything because it just wants to feed you back the things you already liked. You've already accepted Palpatine as a villain, so accept him again. You've already accepted non-stop iconography, so let's have a set piece in the ruins of the Death Star that shouldn't even exist because it disintegrated in orbit of Endor. But again, much like Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber in The Force Awakens, is just thrown in there for pointless fan service. You're not meant to know how or why it's there. Just accept it. Right, well, no, we're not accepting it. But what does it say when even a shameless shill for Disney, like Matt Goldberg, says that Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker offers a warm embrace of a dancing corpse? I mean, because obviously he's a fan of The Last Jedi and Rian Johnson, which just means he's an idiot who has no taste, and is only complaining because Rise of Skywalker didn't destroy the Skywalker legacy the way he wanted it to be destroyed. But what does it say about a movie when even a shill like that says it's downright awful? And here, on Twitter, we see from someone who screen capped the premiere with his phone, yeah, Reylo is a thing, although probably not in the way you were expecting if you were actually a fan of The Last Jedi. Basically, Palpatine starts draining away the life energy from Rey and Kylo before casting Kylo into some kind of pit. And then Rey expends the rest of her life energy destroying Palpatine. When Kylo climbs out of the pit, he resurrects Rey with a kiss, and yeah. So this is just bloody awful. And of course, here's the other screen cap showing the Force ghosts of Luke and Leia as Rey ignites a yellow-bladed lightsaber, which, again, is shameless nostalgia pushing, because if you are a fan of the extended universe, and you know, yellow lightsabers are basically they're wielded by a type of Jedi called a Jedi Sentinel, where so there's basically three types of Jedi educational philosophies within the order. There's the Guardians, who wield blue lightsabers. They're the ones who are more inclined towards martial arts and, you know, physical confrontation. There are the Counselors who wield green lightsabers. People like Yoda and Qui-Gon Jinn, although I don't consider Qui-Gon Jinn to be really canon. You know, because they are more attuned to the Force and they rely on the Force more than they do on their lightsabers or physical confrontations. And then you've got the Jedi Sentinels, who are basically the balance between those two philosophies, where they wield the yellow lightsabers, and they're more likely to pick a lock to gain entry into a place, whereas the Guardian will want to go in guns blazing or lightsaber blazing, and the Counselor will want to knock on the door and announce presence, while the Sentinel will just pick the lock and sneak in. So, you know, but, you know, that's kind of, you know, the point is that there's just nothing but nonsensical fan service for its own sake, and this is what Star Wars has come to. Because Jar Jar Abrams was probably one of the worst choices you could have made to resurrect Star Wars after the Disney purchase. But it made almost as much money as the original Star Wars did, adjusted for inflation. Not quite as much. Likely will never be as much. But it was profitable. And I suspect the large portion of that was because of advanced ticket sales. People, you know, flocking to see the movie because it would have been the first Star Wars movie since Return of the Jedi to feature the continuing adventures of Luke and Leia and Han and Chewie and the droids. And of course, it was a massive disappointment. That, again, relied on breakneck pacing that didn't allow you to have any time to think about the insults that were being lobbed at you at a mile a minute. So, yeah, that's the reason why Jar Jar Abrams was one of the worst people to come in and direct. And then you had Rian Johnson, who was even worse. And who actually, because he was trying to be more clever than everyone else, decided to try and end the trilogy early so he could get to his own trilogy, which apparently Kathleen Kennedy had promised him for reasons I still don't know why, because when you do something so unbelievably stupid and insulting, why would anyone trust you to direct your own trilogy when you've alienated over half your audience and disrespected Luke and turned Leia into Mary Poppins in space and set up Reylo and killed off Snoke, and then, you know, basically told us, you know, I mean, because at least with Jar Jar Abrams, I know he's a con artist and he's all about the setup with no intention of ever paying it off, but he doesn't tell you that there's no intention of ever paying it off. Rian Johnson, at least I'll give him credit for being this honest. He told us You're fucking scumbags for even expecting payoffs. There's no payoff. There's never going to be a payoff. That was The Last Jedi. And then Jar Jar Abrams now comes along with The Rise of Skywalker and delivers no payoff whatsoever because he's incapable of delivering payoff. He's incapable of writing endings. That's why he starts shit and then leaves and goes off to start more shit that he never finishes. Because he does not know how. He doesn't care to know how. All he does is shameless nostalgia pushing and mimicry. That's all. He's not inspired by anyone. I don't think he even likes movies. I don't think he likes television. Which, if you're a television and movie director, means that you basically wasted your entire career. Because if you don't have the passion for film and television, you should not be working in film and television. Just like if you don't have a passion for whatever job you're doing, you should not be in that job. You should be in the job that you have passion for. And I don't know what job Jar Jar Abrams would have a passion for. Maybe he should be working in a magic shop selling nothing but magic mystery boxes, because that's all he's good at. Selling the cheap crap that can't be given away by throwing it into a box and labeling it as $50 worth of magic stuff for $15 when it's actually just $5 worth of magic stuff for $15, and you just wasted $10 on a lie. But you see, the thing about that is that actual magic stores that pull that shit, if that's all they ever sell, they wouldn't stay open because word of mouth would spread and no one would buy those mystery boxes again. That's why those mystery boxes are just a cheap marketing ploy to sell the stuff that doesn't move, so they can make money off of something that otherwise would have been a wasted investment, but they still have actual magic items that people would want to buy. And Jar Jar Abrams sells only magic mystery boxes, nothing else, because he is incapable of delivering anything else. So why did Bob Iger, after The Force Awakens, after The Last Jedi, after Solo, which lost money at the global box office, why the fuck did he bring back Jar Jar Abrams to complete something knowing that he is deficient when it comes to finishing anything? This movie should, and it certainly deserves, to lose money at the box office. I want this thing to fail so badly that it finally ends the career of Jar Jar Abrams and Rian Johnson and Alex Kurtzman, because you know Alex Kurtzman is just finishing the destruction of Star Trek on the small screen that Abrams began on the big screen back in 2009. I want the careers in Hollywood to end definitively, forever, never work again. I don't want them even directing commercials because it would just screw that up. I want this thing to fail so badly that Disney is forced to sell off Lucasfilm and everything that comes with it, because Star Wars in the hands of Disney is dead. Except for The Mandalorian, there is nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, going forward that true fans of Star Wars are ever going to buy. They're not going to Galaxy's Edge, I'll tell you that much. Because the only attraction that's worth a damn over there is a Millennium Falcon life-size replica. And that's it. They've got nothing else that's worth anything. And it's overpriced. So people are not spending money that could be spent on something better that offers more for the price that's being demanded. So congratulations, Disney. You wasted over $4 billion purchasing Lucasfilm, lying to George Lucas, saying that, oh, yeah, we'll use your treatment for the new trilogy that we want to do, and yeah, just sign on the dotted line right here. Yeah, don't think about it, just sign it. And then proceeded to toss that treatment out and do this bullshit. I mean, I've got my problems with George Lucas as a storyteller, chiefly, with his insistence on constantly tinkering with his first best work. I mean, THX 1138 was pretty much it was a really great movie. I like that. I think there was only minimal tweaking with that, but that was kind of like a precursor to Star Wars. And American Graffiti, okay, that really wasn't anything special. It was, it was okay for what it was. But Star Wars really was his first biggest success as a director and a storyteller. And when he did the special editions, he just is incapable of leaving his own best work alone. So yeah, and then the prequels, again, he got full of himself and failed to go back and watch his own first trilogy to get the details right. So he retconned stuff that had no business being retconned, and of course, his dialogue is garbage. They've killed younglings. Oh my God, dude! So you could tell in Revenge of the Sith that, yeah, it's bad. So, except for Ian McDiarmid, who pretty much saved that movie. Yeah, but even at his worst, though, George Lucas still knew how to tell a decent story that was compelling, that had character arcs, that had things that worked because really because of all the influences that George Lucas had throughout his life. Everything from Kurosawa to Ford to Tolkien to Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers Republic serials, all stuff like that. World War II films, and all of that informed him and allowed him to use his own voice to tell a story that is endearing and stands the test of time. Jar Jar Abrams, no. In 10 or 15 years, no one will ever remember that he directed a couple of Star Trek reboots. No one will remember that he was attached to the destruction of Star Wars, because he is entirely forgettable as a director. He's not inspired. He's not original. All he does is pointless rehashes of films that have been done before and better by other people. And because Bob Iger decided to triple down on that, we have this. Palpatine returned. Anakin Skywalker's final sacrifice at the end of Return of the Jedi, rendered null and void. Luke Skywalker demeaned and diminished and cast aside. Leia cast aside. Han Solo dies like a bitch at the hands of his own son. Lando Calrissian turned into a pansexual for no particular reason except as pointless pandering to a target demographic that wasn't even asking to be pandered to. Yeah, this is what Star Wars has come to. So, what do you think? Have you seen the premiere? What do you think about it? I have no intention of wasting my money on this. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you have any self-esteem, if you have any respect for your own intelligence, don't waste your money on this crap. If you have to see it, check it out from the library or something, but don't spend your money on it. Don't reward Disney for bad behavior. And with The Mandalorian, I mean, that's successful because Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni actually understand what makes Star Wars work, and they understand good storytelling. I mean, it's not a perfect show by any means. Yeah, there is a lot of pointless fan service in there, but it's fan service done right. It advances the plot. It advances the narrative and builds the characters. And you can complain all you want about the pacing of the episodes and how it seems to be nothing but filler. I just think it's a return to the old school version of narrative storytelling, where each episode is self-contained and you just shouldn't have to rely on the episodes that came before in order to get what's going on. That's why they keep reminding people in every episode, yeah, the Yoda baby was part of a job where he went rogue and, got himself banished from the Bounty Hunters Guild and is now being hunted by the Bounty Hunters. Because each episode is a standalone story, it has to be self-contained. Hence, you get all these reminders. Now, I think they're going to be overdoing it if they don't, do something soon to wrap up the season 1 story arc. But what does it say when a spin-off TV series manages to do what Jar Jar Abrams and Rian Johnson are incapable of doing, which is to tell a good story that is set within the Star Wars universe and have compelling characters you actually care about and want to see survive and win the day. And here you've got this bullshit, where Luke and Leia and everything they stood for destroyed to prop up a Mary Sue character who never has to really struggle for anything, never has to learn or grow or undergo her own hero's journey. Just gets everything handed to her because she's what? Because she's female? Because that's what the plot demands? I mean, come on. I mean, none of this was necessary. None of it. What we're seeing here is the destruction of Star Wars in order to milk every penny out of its corpse. There was never any intention of telling a coherent story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Only with a beginning and a constant plodding along from one movie to the next until people get bored and stop watching. Because they realize after a certain point that there was never going to be a payoff. Because there was never any intention of having a payoff. Not in a series that's meant to go on continually without end. But of course, at some point, it's going to end, not because it concluded in any satisfying manner, but because people just got sick of it and turned it off. That's what Star Wars is reduced to. I blame Kathleen Kennedy for this, yes. I blame Jar Jar Abrams. I blame Rian Johnson. But most of all, I blame Bob Iger for lying to George Lucas, for buying Lucasfilm with the intention of churning it out churning out Star Wars movies like product on a factory conveyor belt. An endless stream of magic mystery boxes that have nothing but junk on the inside. That is what Bob Iger has done to Star Wars. He is the one on whom all of this ultimately rests. Kathleen Kennedy should see her career in Hollywood end for all time, because she is nothing but a shameless yes woman who does Bob Iger's bidding. And yes, she hired Jar Jar Abrams, a shallow, one-dimensional thief who simply recycles things that have been done before and better by other people with far more talent than he'll ever have. And she hired Rian Johnson and promised him a trilogy of his own, who then went on to destroy the trilogy that's currently been working on. And then bringing back Jar Jar Abrams to further destroy it. I mean, do you realize that the cast of this trilogy have expressed no interest in returning whatsoever? Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, that they've said in interviews, they're done. Mark Hamill, done. He will never return after this. His obligation to Disney and Lucasfilm, it's done. It's over with. He's not going to come back. And by the way, how does Luke's Force Ghost have longer hair than he did in The Last Jedi when Jake Skywalker was alive? Have you ever noticed that? What, can Force Ghosts appear to grow old? I don't think so. But yeah, it's just one of the many insults to our intelligence that this movie represents. So yeah, I have no intention of wasting my money on this bullshit. Jar Jar Abrams, Rian Johnson, Kathleen Kennedy, and most of all Bob Iger have done what no one else could have. They've made me lose interest in Star Wars. Unbelievable. So what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear from you. If you've seen the movie, please tell me everything that was in it, because I need to try and do a spoiler-laden review of what's going on in here without actually having to watch this in, because I don't want my intelligence insulted, but I will report on what other people are saying on it. Yeah, that's what it's come to, because I refuse to spend my money on this. I'm not even going to bother trying to find a bootleg copy, because why would I want to reward Disney by reviewing something that somebody spent money on? Because that's just supporting it by proxy. So yeah, but yeah, anyway, if you like what you've heard and you want to hear more, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon and select all to receive notifications whenever we upload new content. Like this video, share it to as many venues as you can. If you want to help support the channel, keep the lights on, help us bring you more content, head over to our Patreon or Subscribe Star page. I've also got a tech fundraiser in the description below. Until next time, this is Michael Wilk for the Wilk Report saying take care, good night, I'm out.